Like many people out there, I too have my opinions about the era of the Wild games. Of course, by that I mean the trio of games Breath of the Wild, Age of Calamity, and Tears of the Kingdom. I poured hundreds of hours into these games. Seriously, I think I took over 120 hours on Age of Calamity, definitely took over 140 on Tears of the Kingdom. I don't quite remember how long Breath of the Wild took me, although I'm sure it was just as long, if not longer, than those two. During my playthroughs of this era of Zelda, specifically Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I was intrigued by the weather system that we see in-game. In games? We're gonna pretend that's not awkward to say and just move on. I liked the inclusion of surfaces being slippery during a rainstorm, for example. Of course they would be, because surfaces are infinitely harder to grasp when they're wet. It was a nice inclusion to see in-game, not to mention accurate for real life as well. Another interesting aspect in these games is the inclusion of thunderstorms, specifically its function in the games. In many games, thunder usually acts as a feature to make a scene feel foreboding, giving a sense of dread to all who witness it. In these games, however, lightning influences the surrounding environment. If Link is wearing anything with metal on it, the lightning will strike him after a certain amount of time has passed. It does give some warnings before it hits him, but if he's wearing anything metallic and doesn't remove it, he's getting shocked and hurt, losing several hearts in the process. This is a classic case of cloud-to-ground lightning. Lightning that moves from the cloud and hits something on the ground. Most lightning is intra-cloud lightning, or lightning that strikes within the cloud itself, and is likely the most common form of lightning that we see in video games. To see a true example of cloud-to-ground lightning is rare in video games, so it's really cool to see it displayed in this game. Yet something isn't quite right about this. You might be questioning why. After all, it's common knowledge that lightning strikes anything that's metallic in nature. That's why you're not supposed to wear excessive amounts of metal during a thunderstorm or be anywhere near metal features when there's lightning outside. Well, sure, that makes sense. If what I just said wasn't mostly false, that makes sense. Wait, what? Yeah, I know. When I learned this, I was shocked. Quite literally, in fact. As it turns out, it's a common myth that lightning strikes something just because it's made of metal. It's such a common myth, in fact, that my own parents told me this when I was a kid. It took me going to college and getting my degree in meteorology to learn the truth. I suspect this myth came about because metal is a really good conductor of electricity. Metal allows electricity to flow through it quite easily. So if you touch something metallic in a thunderstorm, and that object gets struck by lightning, you'll get injured because you're touching something that's a good conductor of electricity. Why would lightning strike Link then? What other reason would lightning strike a person? On top of that, why can he get struck repeatedly? Unfortunately for us, or well, fortunately for me, I get to nerd out about this. For the rest of you, the answer is a bit complicated. Before we get too far, we need to talk about a little secret of mine. I'm not afraid of most types of weather, but I am deathly afraid of thunderstorms. To understand why, we gotta talk about what makes a thunderstorm. There are three things that we need to form thunderstorms. One of them is a word that many people despise, but I'll keep its use to a minimum for you, just to spare your ears. For the record, if you're not okay with the word moist, don't go into meteorology, we use it all the time. The three main ingredients for thunderstorm formation are moisture, instability, and lift. Moisture is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere. Instability occurs when there's warm air that rises when it's given a bit of a push. That push is known as lift. Lift typically occurs because, as the sun heats the Earth's surface, some heat is transferred to the air, which creates different air densities. This difference in air density is the main source for lift. This lift can be accompanied by several different mechanisms. For example, an atmospheric front can lift warm air upward over cold air, since warm air is less dense than cold air, resulting in the formation of a thunderstorm. So how does this all result in lightning? Well, I'm glad you asked. When the air rises, it will transfer heat from Earth's surface to the upper levels of the atmosphere. This cools the water vapor, resulting in condensation and cloud formation. The cloud, given ample moisture, instability, and lift, will end up growing into areas where the temperature is below freezing, so really high up in the atmosphere, which will end up creating ice particles of various shapes and sizes from the water vapor. Since there's so much water vapor in the atmosphere, it freezes and collides with other particles, both what has been frozen and what hasn't been frozen, resulting in these particles exchanging electric charges. If enough of these electric charges come together, it'll create a bolt of lightning. That's the simplified version in a nutshell. Okay, sure, that's all well and good, but what does that have to do with Link getting struck by lightning? To be fair, I did say it was complicated. See, thunderstorms can technically form anywhere so long as they have the three ingredients. As a result, lightning can form pretty much anywhere. Once it gathers enough electric charge, well, it can't stay there forever. It has to discharge somewhere. Similar to a lot of things in science, the atmosphere is trying to reach a state of balance, or equilibrium. To do that during a thunderstorm, it has to release an electric charge. Now, as I'm sure you all know, it obviously hits Link when he's wearing metal, but the fact that he's wearing metal should have nothing to do with why he's getting struck. Since this is a video game mechanic, well, yes, that's the reason here, but the real reason for him getting struck is not quite like that. Link initially sets himself up to be struck by lightning by making one critical mistake. He's running around outside during a thunderstorm. A person is never, and I repeat, never safe if they're outside during a thunderstorm. Not truly, at least. The National Weather Service, based in the United States of America, tells people to find the nearest safe shelter. If it's indoors and not exposed to the elements, it's safe. This is usually something like a house or even a motor vehicle. If you're outside, it doesn't matter if you're crouching, lying flat on the ground, or running like your life depends on it, it is not considered to be safe. When you're outside during this type of weather, you run the risk of getting struck by lightning. While it's a 1 in 15,300 chance for a person to get struck by lightning, yes, that's seriously the statistic, people that are struck by lightning run the risk of passing away because of it. Granted, this doesn't happen to most people that are struck by lightning. We actually have very few lightning fatalities. Only about 10% of people that are struck by lightning will perish from it. The other 90% survive. However, those that do survive a lightning strike do not normally escape unscathed. Their health is usually impacted in some way, shape, or form, and some deal with long-term or even permanent disabilities. By running around outside during these storms, Link is setting himself up to potentially be hit. However, if lightning would strike him because he's wearing metal equipment, why would lightning strike him? To be entirely honest with you, lightning is looking for the nearest object to discharge on. Usually it aims for something that's close to it, is pointy, and isolated, the easiest path for it to discharge. Trees are often a source lightning aims for because they're tall and pointy. Another example is the Empire State Building in New York City. In fact, the Empire State Building is hit with lightning 23 times per year on average. A person is normally not the first thing to get struck, simply because we're not taller than most things surrounding us. Now say we're in the middle of a grassy plain, like the Great Plains, where there are very few trees and structures taller than us. It's definitely an increased risk of getting struck by lightning in those cases, since we are the tallest thing in the region for the lightning to hone in on. But it's not a guarantee you're going to be hit by said lightning. You probably could already guess this, but lightning strikes are somewhat random. Sometimes the lightning travels further from a thunderstorm center than you'd think. It could strike at least 3 miles away from a storm center. In fact, this happens quite frequently. It can even sometimes strike 10 to 15 miles away from a thunderstorm center, all to find that path of least resistance. This is also the reason lightning can strike the same place multiple times. Usually that place is the path of least resistance for it to discharge itself. If Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom didn't use metal to showcase Link getting struck by lightning, then we could say that path of least resistance is, well, Link. Sorry, Link. So why is it that in-game metal objects cause Link to be struck by lightning? Well, given how common the myth is that wearing metal increases a person's chance of getting struck, this is likely a part of the reason why. On top of that, from a gameplay perspective, it gives the player a tell of sorts as to whether or not they're at risk of getting struck. Imagine if neither game had signs that Link was about to get struck by lightning, and he just got hit by a bolt out of the blue and took serious damage. That player would be beyond frustrated if this happened to them. This leads me to believe that they programmed the game this way to ensure the mechanic worked in a fair way to the player. In the name of fairness, I can excuse these games for not being 100% meteorologically accurate on this one. After all, I sure wouldn't like it if Link randomly died because of a lightning bolt. Thank you all so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you all in the next one.